Hey, I kind of didn't do the actual review until like later in the video. I'll put up a timestamp as to when I start doing the actual review. The first like minute or two is just me kind of giving my first impressions of the client and everything. If you want to hear the actual review, the controversy, all that kind of stuff, my thoughts on it, just go to the timestamp shown on the screen. Sorry for the long intro. See ya. Thanks. That's a cool launcher. Alright, so I bought beta for Feather Client. That was yeah, I don't know why I spent my money on that, but it's been a really high acclaimed client. I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I kind of just wanted to try it myself. I did a bunch of research, saw how it works, and I have to say, I am duly impressed. I mean, honestly, it was kind of expected considering the fact that adding Forge to a client was something that's been in development before. Something that's been tried out before. There's this thing called Apollo Client. I actually was trying to get beta on it, but I think there's some controversy with the owner or something, or stuff that just kind of wasn't working at all. So they kind of shut everything down, which is unfortunate. But anyways, regardless, I'm gonna be trying out Feather Client, doing some bridge games with it, maybe some sweaty games. See how things go. See how well Feather Client holds up compared to Lunar. Alright, so I had to switch to my other microphone because voice meter wasn't really working very well. But in terms of looks, usability of the client, and how the UI is set up, Feather Client is quite superior above Lunar and Badlion in my opinion. This is personal preference of course, but I think that Feather looks quite a bit better. The reasons for this include the awesome layout of the mods and the clean, identifiable icon designs for each module. Like Lunar, you can change the layout of the mods to be a list that is obviously copied from Lunar, or in a grid view, also obviously copied from Lunar, which I will get into later since I know people are probably mad at me for the controversies that are going on in the community regarding Feather Client, which is completely reasonable and stupid at the same time, but anyways, with the little sliding buttons to enable or disable each mod. In my opinion, this is a bit easier to use than Lunar. Knowing whether a mod is enabled or disabled can be a lot easier to understand than the text or just green or red saying whether it's enabled or not. Sure, having the bar at the bottom may be more preferable to some people, but the buttons make things feel a bit more tangible when they move left to right. Similar to how iOS works for iPhones. Color switches help, but colors aren't everything. On top of that, you can change the color scheme for the entire mod menu on Feather Client. Obviously, an idea taken from Mellow Client, may it rest in peace. Feather Client has a cool little feature where you can change the entire setup of the main color scheme for the client. Lunar also has this feature, but it's a little tiny setting for branding color, which doesn't change anything except the logos. Speaking of such settings, Lunar Client has a settings tab at the top right, but it isn't laid out as nicely as Feather Client's tabs at the top left. The buttons are a bit larger, meaning people can notice them a bit easier. There are 4 setting buttons: Feather Mods, General, Chat Options, and Performance. A lot easier to distinguish than Lunar's, considering they basically hide theirs on top with a small font that is not very readable. For Feather Client, Feather Mods is the default mod menu that you're greeted with when pressing right shift. General contains all the general settings such as the main color of the client, as I mentioned earlier, the typical borderless full screen, full bright, minimal view bopping, etc. But there's also some neat settings that Lunar doesn't have, such as the Hud Editor. This Hud Editor allows you to change the color of the HUD lines when moving around or editing the mods along with the snap distance, which I'll talk about later. Another thing that is really neat is the ability to change the quality of the HUD for like slower laptops or PCs. This feature changes the quality of the font you're choosing, allowing lower-end PCs to render less and not hog as much resources. These features are super cool, and while they may just seem like small features, these changes are actually something that Lunar might want to consider implementing. Onto the chat options, it's basically just Lunar's chat mod, but with its own separate category. Basic stack messages, mentions, etc. All these things are already something that Lunar has. Finally, it's the Performance tab, which is pretty much just a lot of Minecraft developer mumbo jumbo. Fast rendering just renders things easier for your computer. Direct memory access hogs memory resources in order to run Minecraft smoother, I think, I'm not sure. Fast font rendering renders font faster, and that's like pretty much all I know. Anyways, that's the gist of Feather Client's mod menus. Onto what I dislike most about it compared to Lunar, since BLC is pretty much out of its own league here. It's a snapping replacement of the mods. With Lunar, by default, each mod has a background to it, just like Feather Client does. However, the text was the same size and fit in the same size box as 90% of all the other mods. This meant that you could place them on top of each other nicely without worrying about some mods having wider boxes than the others. Feather Client unfortunately doesn't do this. Each mod is different in size to other mods. As to why this is, I have no clue. It is obvious to many people that Lunar does a better job of this than them. But on top of that, the way they implemented the movement of modules in the HUD is very poor, maybe even worse than BLC. And it is extremely difficult to place mods precisely compared to Lunar at Badline without it snapping to some weird place or the center of my screen. By default, the snap distance set in general settings is way too high. For newer users, this may be a pain when first setting up their mod positions or settings. Feather should take notice of this and change the default settings to be more user-friendly. Moving on from that, Lunar has a better main menu screen than Feather in my opinion. Feather's main menu doesn't match their general client, and considering the mod colors don't change the buttons for single player, multiplayer, or the other buttons on the main menu, the red looks somewhat ugly. The buttons are also out of place with the rest of the client, having a sliding animation moving to a weird gradient that doesn't resemble the buttons on the top right. Lunar does this much better with a less nauseating parallax. Pro tip, use a really FOV for cinematic. And choose singular buttons to click on, rather than a giant logo with buttons that aren't in the center, as if Feather is trying to punch the viewer in the face. Aside from that, in terms of Lunar and Feather's launcher, I dislike both of theirs, but Lunar does a better job, honestly. The play button is relatively stylish and easy to look at, whereas Feather just looks like an upgraded version from PvP Lounge, which isn't saying much, considering that PvP Lounge is a hot load of garbage that I still use now and then because the FPS boost is noticeable.
It has been increasing my FPS decently. Not right now, apparently. Oh, no, this is okay. Not bad FPS, actually.
Comparing aside, one more issue I have with Feather's launcher is its mod section. Well, I must say, holy crap, the mod section actually doesn't look half bad. The issue lies in the browse mod section. I don't understand the point of all these mods since they aren't even in the Feather mod section and are just add-ons that shouldn't be here. While I do understand it's a core part of the client and installing it is similar to switching from vanilla Minecraft to Forge, it feels very unnecessary and mods like HD skins don't seem important enough to be in its own section. However, I would like to say some good things about the launcher. Everything in it feels super easy to use and understand what each component is for. While it still looks like a reboot of PvP Lounge, the general state of the launcher is really comfortable to utilize and move around in. Adding mods is super simple and easy compared to Forge, where chucking in something requires you to look at 5 different websites and 10 different YouTube tutorials. You just drag the .jar file into the folder that the launcher provides you with and it live updates on the screen with the image own mod. Replay mod also works really well and didn't require me to download FFmpeg. It was a smart decision by Feather to include it as a general preset instead of requiring the user to download it. Now onto the big stuff. I'll get to the controversy, but I'd like to discuss the FPS first. A lot of people say that Lunar gives more FPS than Feather, and for me, I get marginally less FPS than Lunar, but for me it's so much more stable. I receive no lag spikes compared to Lunar and Forge, where lag spikes are very frequent. I get more FPS on Lunar, but I prefer smoothness over higher frames. I'd rather have a consistent 120 FPS with no lag spikes than 800 FPS with lag spikes happening frequently. This means that Feather is more preferable for me than Lunar, but for everyone it's going to be different. I saw a comment who said that they got 3 times more frames on Feather than Lunar, while some YouTubers, I believe Hurton, get more frames on Lunar than Feather. Each PC and laptop is different, similarly to how some people get more frames on Badline than Lunar. It also depends on how many mods you have, whether you added your own mods, etc. And utilizing less may, no guarantees, increase frames. Now onto the controversy of Feather and Lunar. I haven't gotten a lot into it, but I know a bit on what's been going on and have made Minecraft clients before. And before you ask, yes, I was making a bridge client, and no, I will most likely not be releasing it. Now, Feather client is obviously copied from Lunar in terms of graphic design. It is very evident and super obvious. Why the developers chose this? I don't know. The layout of the mods, the settings screen, all of these are direct copies from Lunar. But do I have a problem with this? Heck no. I'm the consumer, and these are 2 competing clients on the Minecraft market. Do I regret paying for something like this? Probably. Feather client will obviously suffer from this, but this does not mean that I support people copying from each other. Will I get a Feather client cape if the requirements are lower than Lunar? Probably. As I said before, I'm a consumer and a content creator. If the requirements are 1,000 subscribers and I made that mark, I will 100% apply for partner. Unless their owners come out as some pedophile or some super bad person, they aren't harming anybody except Lunar in this situation. And I mean, sure, possibly themselves, but they aren't directly copying everything. If they were to copy an entire client in graphics and change the performance or mods they have, then there's a problem. If it's literally Lunar client but blue, then it's a problem. But they're copying basic graphic designs, not the entire client. It's scummy, sure, but it doesn't make them inherently bad people. It's like people copying Apple's simplistic designs. Is there a problem with people taking the idea of a simplistic button design? Heck no. Is it a problem if people sell Apple iPhones and call it orange U phones? Yes. Now onto the controversy of feather copying Patcher, or Skier, and Lunar's code. I took a look at the forum post N4B Nabi, I don't know, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Minecraft have its own font renderer? I mean, I remember doing client development and there being some kind of font renderer class. That's how I made my own modules for FPS, CPS, etc. I don't know why my Minecraft coder pack isn't loading on my PC, but I know for a fact that there is a font renderer class. And if there isn't, I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. Patcher was made through Forge MDK, which is something you can download on the Forge website. It is very similar to MCP, aka Minecraft Coder Pack, which is what 90% of all client developers use to create clients, which I am 90% sure Lunar, BLC, and Feather Client use. MCP and Forge MDK are also similar enough to use the same method names that Skier is clearly using, aka funk_110552_B, funk_71410_X, etc. However, those methods are created by default when decomplying Forge or MCP. Each default class, whether it be how the player moves, how block behaviors work, etc., are created by default to make Minecraft run normally without the developer needing to recreate the entirety of Minecraft. The fact that Skier left those names is either a sign of poor programming and would lead to very confusing code, and I also know that's not how he codes since I watched some of his mod development videos, or that's the default font renderer edited. Regardless, Feather optimized and cleaned up the code for font rendering. The variable names are cleaner, the method names are less confusing, and the referencing method names that make sense, and are utilizing good habits of a programmer. I know there's a few other controversies regarding Feather being a fork of Forge or Fabric, licensing of mods, etc., but I don't really know enough on both subjects, or any of those subjects in general, to talk about it. I do know that the licensing problem was cleared up on the forum post, so that's taken care of. Anyways, that's my review on Feather Client. I apologize for the really scuffed commentary, but if you did enjoy, be sure to let me know, because this was somewhat fun to make, I guess. I don't know. I am just recording the commentary. I'm not even editing yet. If you have any questions or if I missed anything in the video, let me know as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.